an old house in an Indonesian village. All around is just silence and the terrible shadow of a graveyard. This is where Rini and her family live. Suddenly, Rini's mother mysteriously dies, and her father has to move to the city for work. From then on, a series of abnormal events start to happen in the empty house. Rini then learns that her mother had made a pact with the devil to have children. The condition was very terrifying. When her younger brother, Ian, turns 7, the devil will take him. The time is now almost up. Will they be able to save the little boy named Ian from the clutches of that terrifying darkness? Will the whole family be able to fight the power of the devil? This description might be the most terrifying story you have ever seen. At the beginning of the story, we see a girl named Rini. She was sitting in a music studio. The time was 1981. Rini's mother, Mawani Suwano, was once a famous singer. She had been bedridden for several years with an unknown disease. Rini's family is now almost completely destitute from paying for her treatment. They even had to mortgage their house to the bank. At this time, we see Rini talking to her mother's agent. The agent says that her mother's music records are barely selling anymore. Besides, they have already paid almost all the money her mother was owed. And since she can't sing any more songs due to her illness, they can't help with the financial situation anymore. After this, Rini returns to their house from the city, and we see the other members of her family. The old woman in the wheelchair is Rini's grandmother, and among her 3 brothers, the eldest is Tony. Then there's Bondi and the youngest, Ian. Here, Ian is mute, so he cannot speak. Rini then tells her father about what the agent said, that they will no longer get any money for the songs. At this time, Rini hears her mother Mawani's bell ringing, so she goes to her room. Mawani is so sick now that she has even lost her ability to speak, so she would call everyone with the bell. Suddenly, she sees something in a corner of the room and starts ringing the bell abnormally. But when Rini looks in that direction, she doesn't see anything. Later that night, Rini's younger brother, Tony, sells his bike due to a lack of money. He then gives the money to his father. Meanwhile, Bondi, who is in the kitchen, tells Rini that their religious teacher said in class that when a body is buried, if the last member of that family walks 40 paces from the grave, the body comes to life for a short time. But when it sees itself wrapped in a shroud, it dies once more. Rini dismisses it as a superstition. Tony goes to his mother's room to comb her hair. As he combs it, he sees a lot of hair falling out. He is quite surprised by this. The room window opens on its own. He slowly goes and closes the window. But when he turns around, he sees his mother staring strangely at the window, looking scared of something. Seeing this, Tony gets scared and quickly leaves the room. At night, Rini sees her father sitting next to her mother and talking. But when her father notices Rini, he gets up and leaves without talking to her, for some mysterious reason. When everyone was sleeping at night, Rini sees her mother ringing the bell, so she goes to her room. Then, as soon as she opens the door, her hair stands on end because her sick mother is standing still next to the window. She slowly goes to her mother. At that very moment, she hears her mother's bell from behind. She realizes that her mother is lying in bed. Her mother was ringing the bell repeatedly as if trying to tell her something. So who is standing in front of her? Meanwhile, something that looks like her mother, standing in front, just keeps smiling at them. The next day, we see Rini lying in bed. She had been having a nightmare all this time. At that moment, she hears her mother's bell ringing. As soon as she enters the room, she sees the exact same scene she saw in her dream. Her mother is standing next to the window. She goes close in fear, and as soon as she touches her, she falls down. Seeing such a sight, Rini screams and calls everyone. Everyone rushes to their mother's room upon hearing Rini scream. At this time, they realize that their mother, Mawani, is no longer alive. Everyone breaks down in tears at their mother's death. The next morning, with the help of a man named Ustaz, she is buried in a graveyard right next to their house. During this time, through a conversation between Rini's father and Ustaz, we learn that he recently shifted to this city with his only son, Hendra. Ustaz asks Rini's father why he has never seen him at the mosque. To this, Rini's father says it's because they don't believe in religion. That is, the whole family is atheist. At this time, we see Rini getting introduced to Hendra. Later that night, he tells Tony and Rini that he will be leaving for the city the next morning to earn money. So the responsibility of watching the entire house is now on these two. Later that night, when Tony is about to sleep, he is listening to the radio. At that moment, he hears the sound of a bell from his mother's room. But how is this possible? To check it out, he goes to his mother's room alone. Then, as soon as he opens the door and turns on the light, he sees the bell floating in the air. As soon as he sees this, the bell falls to the ground. Seeing this, a terrified Tony runs back to his room. The next morning, their father leaves for the city. Tony gives Bondi a toy to cheer him up. He gets very happy and starts looking at the pictures inside the toy. Suddenly, he sees his dead mother inside the toy. She was wearing a white wedding dress. Even the day Rini had the nightmare, she had also seen her mother wearing a white wedding dress. Anyway, when night falls, Tony is listening to his radio again. At that moment, his mother's voice comes through the radio. She was repeatedly calling his name, Don. Scared, Tony immediately turns off the radio. At that moment, his mother says from beside him, "Tony, comb my hair." Tony gets scared and immediately falls under the bed. When he looks at his hand, he sees his mother's comb in his own hand. But as soon as he turns on the light, it disappears from his hand. Meanwhile, when Ian and Bondi were returning to the room after using the toilet, Ian points to a picture of his mother and says he is very scared. Then Bondi brings a white cloth to cover it and throws it over the picture. But the cloth doesn't fall on the picture, it falls on something invisible. It looked like someone was standing there. Seeing this, the two children's bodies seem to turn to stone. When they scream in fear, Rini quickly rushes there. Bondi says their mother's ghost is there. But the strange thing is, Ian tells Rini that he didn't see anything there. Meanwhile, we see the grandmother, who is very restless, writing a letter to him. The next morning, Hendra tells Rini that on the date her mother was buried, he had seen an evil spirit like her mother standing among everyone. He had even seen the same spirit standing at the house window a few days ago. This evil force might cause them great harm. Thinking this, he offers Rini's entire family to stay at his house, since their father is not with them now. But Rini does not believe these things, so she rejects his offer. Meanwhile, we see the grandmother, who is very scared of something in the room. Then she slowly gets up from her wheelchair. A little later, Rini returns home. Suddenly, she hears Bondi screaming. She runs to him, where she sees her grandmother's dead body floating in the well. Everyone thinks that the grandmother might have fallen into the well and died while getting water. But no one knows the real truth. The next day, the grandmother is buried in the same spot. After her mother's death, seeing the grandmother also die, Bondi's condition starts to deteriorate. At night, Rini comes to her grandmother's room. There, she sees a letter that the grandmother had prepared to send to someone named Buddyman. So the next day, Rini takes Hendra and goes to Buddyman's address. Because the grandmother had sought help from this Buddyman to save their entire family. Buddyman tells them that his grandmother and Buddyman were very close friends. He also knows that his grandmother did not consent to Rini's parents' marriage, because Rini's mother was a singer. And at that time, singing was not looked upon very well. Also, they were not having any children. But many years later, when Rini was born, the grandmother accepted them. But after Ian's birth, when his mother was afflicted with an unknown disease, they suspected that Rini's mother had chosen the path of the devil instead of praying to God for children. But when Rini doesn't believe him, he gives her a magazine and asks her to read an article he wrote carefully. Meanwhile, Bondi, in his sleep, kept saying the same thing, that he loves his brother very much, so he will never kill him. Then at night, when everyone was eating, he kept staring at Ian. It seemed like he was thinking about killing him in his mind. Even before going to sleep, he gestures to Ian that he will kill him. That is, Bondi is completely under the devil's control. Then late at night, when Ian was going to the bathroom, the door started to open by itself, from which two hands were coming out. Seeing this, Ian tries to run away in a panic, but his shirt gets caught on a hook. And for some reason, that incorporeal spirit couldn't get out from there. The next morning, when Rini enters the room, she doesn't see Ian in bed. After a lot of searching, she finds him inside a trunk outside the house. He was actually scared and had hidden there for the rest of the night. Then Rini lovingly tells him that as long as they are together, no one can do anything to them. Meanwhile, after reading that article by Buddyman, Tony tells Rini that there are many groups in the city who worship the devil. Anyone who has failed to give birth can join there. But the condition is that when the last child turns 7, they have to give them to that group as a sacrifice to the devil. Tony then calculates that his mother gave birth to Tony before Rini turned 7. Similarly, Bondi and Ian were born before they turned 7. Since the last child was supposed to be a sacrifice to the devil after completing 7 years. So whenever the time came for them to turn 7, their mother would give birth to another child to save them. Now the most worrying thing is that Ian will be 7 in 3 days. But Rini was not believing these things. Then, when Rini wants to give food to Ian, her eyes fall on the glass in front of her, and she sees her grandmother's crying face in it. Now she starts to get scared. So she calls Ustaz. Ustaz inspects the whole house. Then he tells them to pray to God. Since they didn't pray, the devil's power was increasing in this house. He also clearly felt the presence of that evil force. At night, when Bondi and Ian were sleeping, Ian suddenly hears the sound of a door opening. He looks in that direction and sees his grandmother's ghost standing near Bondi's head. Then she slowly looks at Ian. Ian quickly covers himself with the sheet in fear. Meanwhile, Rini starts praying as Ustaz told her to. At that time, there was a spirit behind her that looked like her mother. As soon as she finished praying, it suddenly attacks her. Then, seeing the long-nailed hands and the bloodless white face, Rini starts to get extremely scared. Rini screams in terror. After that, she doesn't waste a moment and takes everyone to Ustaz's house. The next morning, Hendra says that besides humans and jinn, there are many evil entities that possess humans to increase their power. Maybe such a devil has set its sights on them. Then Tony tells Rini that according to the article, the members of that cult group would make women who were unable to have children pregnant. This means that their father is not their real father. And that's why their 4 siblings don't resemble each other at all. Meanwhile, Buddyman calls Hendra and asks Rini to meet him. But instead of her, Hendra goes there alone. Then Buddyman hands him an unpublished article. Hendra then asks him for details. At this time, he turns up the volume of the radio. Then he whispers something into his ear, as if his words shouldn't reach the devil. After that, Hendra leaves to go home. At this time, a man suddenly appears in front of him on the road, and when Hendra tries to give way, he has an accident. He dies right there. Was the devil's hand behind Hendra's death? Or was it just an accident? Then, when his body is brought home, Ustaz, having lost his only son, breaks down in tears. And at that moment, the article Buddyman gave Hendra falls out of Hendra's pocket, and Rini picks it up. Then, when night falls, she sees something like Hendra outside the house for a moment. Thinking it's a trick of her eyes, she closes the window. Then that spirit grabs her hand and pulls her. Hearing her scream, Tony and the others come there and pull her away from there. Meanwhile, Ustaz sees everything but doesn't come to help them. But why? Because he was blaming them for Hendra's death. Just then, Rini's father returns. They all feel brave again, and they return to their house again. Rini's father didn't even know that their grandmother had died. He breaks down in tears upon hearing about his mother's death. He then tells Rini that they will all leave for the city the next morning. A little later, Rini asks her father what he said to her mother that night, because her mother had died that very night. To this, her father says that their children were suffering a lot because of him, because all the money was being spent on her treatment. And that's why maybe the mother also accepted her death by giving up to that devil. Just then, they hear Tony screaming, so they quickly come downstairs. He says Ian is trapped inside. After that, the father breaks the door with a lot of effort and enters, only to see something pulling Ian into the well. The father immediately jumps into the well and somehow saves him from there. Then they see a group of men and women in black clothes around the house, and these are the members of that special group. Rini tells her father that they have come here to take Ian. They quickly close the door. But what's the use of closing the door? The devil is already inside the house. Suddenly, the grandmother's wheelchair crashes down on them. Even the other things seem to be coming at them, so they are forced to go inside a room. The door also closes by itself. At this time, Ian and Bondi stay outside the room. Just then, a gust of wind starts blowing strangely inside the room, and a black shadow was standing a little farther away, and Ian was being dragged by that wind. Meanwhile, Rini's father, unable to open the door, was asking for help from his mother and wife's spirits. He even says to Mawani, "It's all my fault. Please forgive me." But what fault is he talking about? Meanwhile, Bondi starts running to save his brother, and to catch him, that black shadow releases Ian. Then everything calms down. The closed door also opens. Here, we can see that the black shadowy spirit was their grandmother's spirit. The grandmother's spirit attacked them, but why? Was she also a devil then? The father then gets very angry and comes out of their room with a knife, and he screams at the cult group, saying that he won't let them take any of his children. Then those members drop something on the ground together before leaving from there. Then morning comes. They start getting ready to go to the city. Rini's father says that since he now has enough money, they will celebrate Ian's 7th birthday tonight. And after the events of last night, Bondi also returns to a normal state. Then, while they were waiting for the taxi, Ustaz comes to say goodbye to them, and he will spend time with them here until they leave. Rini goes outside for a while to walk, but she sees a few red seeds of a certain kind lying on the ground, which those cult members had dropped last night. Then, when night falls, everyone wonders why the taxi hasn't arrived yet even though it's 10 p.m. Just then, the lights go out. Then, Rini remembers the article Buddyman gave her and starts reading the whole text. This is where the real mystery is revealed. She tells Tony that Buddyman has given her a new article in which some things from the previous article have been corrected. That is, the first article said that when the first child turns 7, the cult members will come to take them as a sacrifice to the devil. But this new article says that they will not be taken for a sacrifice. Rather, they will be taken to lead the satanic spirits. Because that last child is the son of the devil himself. And that's why those cult members didn't take Ian that day. Instead, they dropped the seeds to raise the bodies from the graves. So from the beginning, their spirits only attacked Ian to save him, dragging Ian into the well, even possessing Bondi and trying to make him kill Ian. All of this was the work of the grandmother's spirit, so that little Ian doesn't become a devil, and it was the devil who was constantly protecting Ian. After learning all this, Ian had pushed the grandmother into the well and killed her. At this time, Rini and Tony suddenly hear their mother's bell ringing in the middle of their conversation, and so they slowly open the door, where they see their mother has come out of the grave and is entering their father's room. Meanwhile, Rini's father is in a deep sleep. At this time, when that bell comes into his hand, he wakes up, and when he looks to the side, he sees his dead wife sleeping next to him. He rushes to Rini's room in great fear. Meanwhile, when Bondi wakes up, he notices that Ian is standing strangely near the window and constantly saying something in an unknown language. Bondi is very surprised by this because Ian is mute, he cannot speak at all. So, did Ian know from the beginning that he was the devil's son? And was he pretending to be mute all this time? After this, he looks at Bondi and leaves the room with a strange smile. And when Bondi looks at the window, he sees the bodies that have come out of the graves standing outside the window. Since Ian's age has completed 7 years after 10 p.m., the bodies started coming out of the graves one by one. Meanwhile, we see Ian who takes a knife and cuts Usta's throat and kills him. The Reenies, scared of all this, try to escape. But when they come outside, they see Ian standing with the bodies with a smile on his face. They get scared and go back inside the house. Meanwhile, those bodies start surrounding them from all sides. At this time, we also see their spirits trying to stop those bodies. Just at this time, Bondi arrives there to save them. Everyone is somehow saved from there and taken away in his car. Now almost a year has passed. Everyone except Ian is together in an apartment. At this time, a neighbor woman comes to give them food. After this, when that woman returns to her apartment, her husband says that they will not be allowed to escape this time. At this time, we see a map on the wall, where many points were marked. And below it, we see those devil's seeds in a glass jar. So, is this couple also a member of that cult? And are they staying here to keep an eye on Reenie and the others? After this, they both start dancing together. That is, the story is not over yet. To watch the next part, subscribe to our channel and stay with us. And yes, don't forget to tell us how you liked the story in the comments.